Did you know that 97% of the tech founders in the United States never make it to $1 million in annual recurring revenue? Now, this number is absolutely whopping. In this video, we're going to talk about 5 key reasons why founders of tech startups around the globe lose steam before their companies can actually make $1 million in annual recurring revenue, and also what are the actionable strategies we can take in order to solve for this. So if you are an entrepreneur, this video is for you. Hi, I'm Priya. I'm the founder of the Out of Office podcast, where we focus on strategies and mindsets on how to become the top 1% entrepreneur. I am myself an entrepreneur, and in the past, I have created $1 million software companies from the ground up. I have raised funding, I have sold to enterprises, and I've actually come up with some really unique solutions to problems. So let's get started. Before we get into the reasons, what is the entire deal with getting to $1 million in annual recurring revenue? First, it of course makes you feel great. Just imagine if you were the founder of a startup company, how would it feel that your company is making almost $1 million every year? Great, right? More than that, it is also a perfect indicator to the world and to investors, as well as your employees in your company, that your product or solution is actually market viable, which is a great thing. And it actually opens you up to so many things in the future, including capital. Now, while all this is great, unfortunately, as you know, huge number, 97% of the founders do not get to this. So why? Number one, no market demand. In fact, 42% of the companies fail because there is no market demand for their product, which just tells me that either the founders of the companies have not done enough testing on the problem, the job to be done, or the solution, whether it is actually fitting the problem that it is trying to solve. Or second, there could possibly just be that the market for this does not exist anymore. Like, for example, when tech startups in the travel space started in 2019, all of a sudden, the market demand completely vanished because of COVID. There was literally nobody traveling. And so as a result, if there is no market, if there is no buyer, naturally their solution has no fit, right? But often, a lot of this can be mitigated by just thinking about every assumption that you have about the business in a very structured way. You can create those assumptions and think about tests in which you can validate or disprove a certain hypothesis. There are many such ways to do it, but most importantly, create MVPs, create products that can actually test for this and keep iterating, because you're not going to be able to just do this on the very first day. You have to spend time in order to be able to do this. Second reason is cash shortfall. Now, based on statistics, studies show that 29% of the companies shut down because they simply run out of money. And this often happens because we as founders, we tend to underestimate how quickly we can actually get to relatively stable revenue streams. And we are often conditioned through different ways to look at and expect the hockey stick curve, that one day it's going to reach and then boom, 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 we're going to have a lot of customers just flowing in. It's not true as of today. Maybe in certain fields, maybe in the field of AI, if you're an AI software company, but otherwise, it is not that simple. You can't run out of runway before you have completed all your experimentations and testing to get to product market fit. So a really good indicator that I often use is try to raise money for either 2 to 3 years that can take care of your team, that can take care of you as a founder. Second, have a cushion, have a personal cushion for also 2 to 3 years before you actually get into the business. And one of the ways to also find out, if the market is good enough to raise money is simply by looking at the bond yield curves, looking at the interest rates. Now, what happens with interest rates is that if you just look at the bond yield curve, US Treasury bonds or the bonds of whichever country you are, you will notice that it is much easier to raise money when the interest rates are lower. That means that the cost of capital is lower. There is more free money in the market. And so if you approach an investor with a certain idea, then it's highly likely that they might fund you, and you might be able to convince them to raise funds for the next 2 to 3 years. It is highly important to raise enough money for enough runway and not cut yourself short, so that you have enough latitude to be able to test out as many experiments that you can. The first 2 to 3 years of business, so if this is a business, just 2 to 3 years of business is purely testing out what product works for the problem market that you are in and how you can differentiate yourself from the competitors. So ensuring that cash shortfall doesn't happen is very important for a founder. Third reason why founders are never able to get to 1 million is that they work with incompetent teams. And this is almost as often as a cash shortfall. So studies show 23% of the reasons why founders fail is pointing to team issues. So that means that either you as a founder are the only person doing most of the work, then you become the bottleneck, and that will eventually lead to founder burnout. But you are not delegating enough. And you're not delegative enough because either you don't trust your team or you haven't hired competent people. So this is very important to know, that you must hire competent people, pay them well, so they can actually take a huge portion of the workload from you, so that you can keep your mind fresh and creative and agile, so that you can come up with different solutions. You can come up with different innovations in order to keep the company going from 0 to 1 million, 1 million to 10 million. So it's very important to hire the right people in your team. Finally, the fourth point is pricing. And I cannot stress how often, at least I've seen startups and companies in Southeast Asia really mess this up so bad. Now, pricing is super important. But being a first-time founder, sometimes what people end up doing is that in order to become competitive, they start cutting their pricing. Now, so I'll give you an example. Let's say you are a software startup in Southeast Asia, and you've created a Southeast Asia GPT. So let's say you price it at, let's say, $5, but your competing products are at $20. Now that you're offering it at $5, everybody in the market will start reducing their price from $20 to $5. And since these guys have been in the industry and in the space for longer, your competitors have a higher chance of surviving this undercut as compared to you. Now, what you were hoping is basically, hey, I will come cheap as compared to my competitors, and over a period of time, I'm going to grow up. I'm going to increase my price so that I can capture more value later, right? But right now, I'm going to come in at a low cost. That works. But if the entire market goes 5 and you start now increasing to 20, how are you going to gain business? That's one. The second reason why this is such a terrible idea is that now at 5, your margins of profit that you can actually keep are incredibly low. And now these companies, because they've been in the industry for years, they are able to sustain this. But you being a new company will not be able to sustain this. And as a result, you will die. So working on your pricing is very important. If you want to be competitive, don't undercut. Be competitive. Offer it around the same price. If you really want to capture more market and more value, then start at the same price or slightly higher, and then start capturing higher. This will actually do justice to the entire market. Now, this guy can eventually also start increasing their price, and in fact, everybody wins, right? So it's very important to do the pricing right and also work on your unit economics so you can actually make money and not lose money in the long term. I hope that makes sense. Point number 5, founder burnout and mental strain. And I think this is very important. Founder burnout is actually one of the biggest reasons why startups fail and forget about even getting to $1 million in revenue, but they just lose steam and they fail. In fact, studies say that 87% of the founders deal with anxiety, deal with burnout, deal with depression. And this is not because they're working too hard. The entire weight of the companies on their shoulders. And not just that, they're also taking care of the employees' families. And it's incredibly difficult to take on this at a length of 2 to 3 years without taking care of yourself. So 87%, it's a whooping number. Just think about it. If there are 100 startups, close to 90 founders are actually struggling with anxiety, depression, and so on and so forth. So keeping mental health is super important. If not, what this will do is that it will lead to a decision fatigue. People will continue to ask you, hey, so what do we do about this? What do we do about that? And if you've not created systems, more decisions will actually come to you. And that will lead to a decision paralysis because you're already burnt out because you haven't delegated things. So it's, again, very important that you also delegate things. You create systems and you delegate it to other people in your team and build a solid team so that you don't burn out and you don't have to deal with anxiety and you don't have to deal with depression. And will also keep yourself very creative so you can make the right decisions at the time to come. And it will actually store your energy and it will store your mindset. So to summarize, first of all, what are the reasons why founders lose steam before they actually get to $1 million in revenue? No market demand. The product has not been validated. The idea is not validated upfront, or the market has changed. Whatever the reason, there is no market demand, and that's 42%. Second, they don't have enough cash runway because they have overestimated their abilities, the market's abilities, and the product's abilities. And as a result, they just raise probably 6 months to 8 months worth of runway, and this is difficult. I would suggest have 2 to 3 years of cash runway to take care of an entire team that you need. 5 solid people, but have that team doing specific work. These would eventually be your C-suite level. So work with them in that capacity as the company grows and have that latitude. Pay yourself enough so that you don't burn out. And all of this creates opportunity within your company to test as much as you can. And it keeps you out of survival mode, which is absolutely necessary. So you can focus on building the business and not chasing when is the next money or the check that's going to come in. So it's very important that you have a cash strategy. Then hire good, competent people. Pay them well, hire them well. So hire complementary skills. So let's say for example, I am really good at product and software. So I would hire people who are great at marketing, who are great at content creation, who are great at messaging, and so on and so forth. You don't want to be doing all of it. Imagine yourself 5 years down, company's making $20 million in revenue. Are you going to be really doing all the work? So what is the work that you would not be doing? Even though you're good at it, but what is the work that you would not be doing? Or you would rather someone better does? Try and hire those people so you can start delegating and eventually create systems. Fourth, price well. So don't undercut yourself at all, ever. Price well, price high if you can, and people will buy. If the product or the solution is great, people will buy. Don't undercut competition. Be competitive instead. Finally, don't burn out. It's very important that founders don't lose steam. So have systems, work with mindset coach, do your therapy sessions, whatever you need to do to keep yourself aligned, to keep your creative juices flowing. Go play a sport, do something that's not work so that you can have this team to actually get to $1 million in revenue. So I hope understanding these pitfalls and working through them can actually help you get to $1 million in ARR. Yeah. What else? If you're a business owner, then definitely do comment on what are the other reasons that you see are blockers and what other videos that you would like to see in order to help you become the top 1% entrepreneur. Until then, goodbye and see you soon. Follow the Out of Office podcast.